before it became publicly known that cigarettes are horrible for your health. I knew it as a kid. I suspected it. I never smoked. And I don't even like people smoking around me. I mean,
Hmm.
years ago, I would put up with it because so many people were smoking. It was hard to avoid. But now, if somebody said, "Do you mind if I smoke?" I say yes. And if they insist on it, I'll like walk away, or if I have to talk to them, I'll stand like 20 feet away. It looks a little crazy, but you know about secondhand smoke, right?
Oh
And
yeah. Oh
that's
yeah.
another thing that wasn't known years ago. Secondhand smoke is actually almost as bad as the smoking itself. So
Hmm.
they're giving you the 3,000 carcinogens, sending you away. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not going to tell you. That's my choice.
I
You know,
mean, back when I was I suppose back when I was a cook, I always thought it was like, let me hang out with the cool chefs while they're smoking. I never wanted to smoke, but I would literally sit there and I would tolerate it, and it was always so like uncomfortable for me to sit there. But I was like, I want to talk with these guys, you know. And then eventually, I wouldn't do it anymore. And then when I became the sous chef for the first time, I started introducing health breaks instead of smoke breaks. So anybody who wasn't a smoker who wanted to go take 5 minutes, go sit outside, go meditate in their car or something or whatever, totally allowed to, you don't have to be a smoker. So, I mean, long story short, but I literally started implementing these kind of breaks when I became a chef, and all the restaurants I worked at was health breaks, meditation breaks and stuff. And I got a lot of people to quit smoking too. It was good. Cleaner environment.
yeah, yeah. No, it's just there's nothing good about it. I mean, well, to be totally accurate, I can't say that there's nothing good about it
There
because
are some benefits. Yeah.
yeah, nicotine
Nicotine.
can actually be an ergogenic aid. It can actually,
Hmm.
but it's a pretty high price to pay. Considering that it's also a neurotoxin and a poison. I
Hmm.
mean, I personally would not take that chance. There's other ergogenic aids you can use, and it's not worth it. I mean, and there's another thing is that cigarette smokers, when they stop smoking, they tend to gain weight because the chemicals, the nicotine, other chemicals, kind of help suppress the appetite. So
Hmm.
when they stop smoking, they eat a lot, and a lot of people do this. They gain a lot of weight. That's
Plus,
one of
they're
the
always looking for an oral fixation, something to put in the
yeah,
mouth as well.
well, now they got the GLP-1 drugs that'll help them with that stuff. You
I
know,
don't, what's that? I don't know what that is.
GLP drugs are semi-glutide is one of them. These are the big rage now. It's an injection that you take. Called a GLP-1 agonist. GLP stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, and it's produced in the body naturally. And what it does is it imparts a feeling of fullness, and it has a tremendous effect at lowering your appetite. So
Wow.
it was originally designed to treat type, diabetics. Like I say,
Well, that makes sense.
it's a weekly injection, and then they discovered a side effect is that most of the people that used it started losing significant amounts of weight, and I'm
Hmm.
talking like 40 to 80 pounds. And then celebrities started using it, like Elon Musk. A lot of movie stars, started using it who had a tendency to, gain body fat. They started using it, and once that happened, boom! Now it's a big thing, and people, all sorts of people. But there's a couple of drawbacks. For
I was just
one,
about to ask that, of course. Yeah, I was just getting
uh,
to
for one,
that.
most insurance companies, if you're not diabetic, will not pay for it. So you're on your own. We're talking about anywhere from $800 to $1,400 a month for
Ooh.
this drug, and it's injected. And you have to be injected once a week. And worst of all, and this is what they don't tell people, 40%. The studies show 40% of the weight lost when you use this drug is lean mass, muscle.
Oh,
So now here's the antidote. There is an antidote. You already know what it is.
high
Resistance,
intensity exercise. Yeah,
high intensity will actually minimize it. But you know what?
that makes
Think
sense.
the type of people, if you stop and think about it, that would be attracted to a
Aren't
drug
going to be doing that.
that'll help them lose weight without any willpower, really, and not the people that are going to exercise and go to the gym.
Exactly.
So they're going to lose muscle, 40%. So as soon as they get off the drug, the weight comes right back.
You don't want that anyways. They're probably going to be all fatigued and feel like shit all the time as it is.
Well,
So it's,
it also causes nausea, gastrointestinal symptoms, and in very small percentage, it might increase the risk of pancreatic cancer, which you probably know that's the deadliest cancer of all, less than 5% survival after 5 years. So, I mean, part of me says, gee, I'd like to try this thing just to see what kind of effect, because I do work out with weights. I'd like to, see, if I dropped 30, 40 pounds, I'd be happy,
Yeah,
but
I'm curious about that myself. Oh, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Back to the smoking though, the benefits of nicotine is a focusing agent, a temporary focusing agent.
yeah,
So
it's
if
kind
you
of a,
wanted, so if you want to take, like I do this myself, I'm having trouble particularly focusing. It's been a while since I've had to do this. But you take like a 2 milligram, 1 milligram nicotine pill. They sell them at gas stations and stuff. Or you break them in half or something. But it's a great way to focus for a workout, for example, or to write. We were just joking about writing, to joke, to any of that stuff.
you
I can't
you
can't
could
think of
do
any other benefits.
you could do that, but and you're right. It will increase your mental focus. It works what they call the nicotinic receptors in the brain
Mm,
it attaches to. So that's true. You get a certain amount of stimulation. I mean, a lot of smokers will tell you that it stimulates them, but I think there's other alternative ways to get the same benefits without having to resort to nicotine, which even in small amounts, it's still a freaking poison, and
mm,
it's also myotoxic. It breaks down muscle, just like alcohol does. So I mean, it's up to the individual. Personally, I would avoid it. And as
yeah,
far as the GLP-1 drugs, I mean, I'm not that motivated to, fork over $1,400 a month to pay for this, for these things. I mean, I wouldn't do it myself.
I would
If
rather
it,
just watch my food intake. I mean,
yeah,
it's not.
I'll do it the old school way, diet and exercise.
Yeah, I mean, on a separate note, I should probably mention this since I did just say it's been a long time. It's been several years since I've taken nicotine pills, but I'm always screwing around with biohacking, and it seemed like something to try. I don't do it anymore. The reason I don't do it anymore, just for everybody who would be asking, it's because there's a large variety of different breathwork exercises you can do that focus you and concentrate you. They literally maybe a minute or two of concentrating on your breath in a particular way, and you're good and focused to go for a I don't know how long an extended period of time. It depends on the individual. For me, it's usually about 30 minutes of sustained focus. I can maintain pretty good. If it's a very interesting subject, I might be able to do an hour or two. Kind of depends. You're probably the same way, I would imagine, Jerry.
I've been asked to do articles about nicotine as an ergogenic aid, and I considered it, but I just think that the nicotine itself, it bothers me. The properties associated with it. I wouldn't want to like write an article where it more or less it's interpreted as an endorsement by me
Mm, mm.
about using nicotine. And one reason is that, it's the old thing where if one pill is good, 5 or 10 pills will be better.
Everybody thinks that. Ugh.
I'm saying if you could stick to, let's say, the minimal dose like you were just talking about, it probably won't hurt you. That's true. But I think a lot of people will be tempted if they notice a difference to increase the dose and they could get into trouble. So I don't, for that reason, I never wrote about it. I'm not saying I never will. If more research emerges that suggests that it has additional benefits that haven't been fully, let's say, revealed yet, and it's
Mm.
worth an article, yeah, I'll write about it then. But right now, it's kind of like in the gray area. There's a
I
lot
feel
of,
like I feel like if there was, the tobacco company would be like, you
oh
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they love it if more people smoked.
Yeah, they would say, "Well, look at all these amazing brain boosting, whatever benefits
Yeah,
but they don't. There's nothing, and they could have got a lot of money to spend on that too. So
yeah, they got a lot of money. Sure they do. Yeah.
it's one of those actually things I don't like about. Sometimes you never hear the other half of the story, as you just mentioned with your article. I'm glad you take that into consideration. I've heard so many stories where somebody will say, let's do a research about this particular subject first. We'll do the bads, then we'll do the goods afterwards. So they do all the particular bad aspect and they publish that, and then because of the feedback they get from all the horrible from the bad, the good never comes to light. It never even gets mentioned, even though the good may far outweigh the bad because they did the bad first, and usually it's kind of intentionally done that way. Lots of psychedelics this was done to, lots of clinical trial drugs for things like, well-known things like cancer. This was done to as well to suppress the information. Again, it sounds conspiracy theory when I say this until you actually look at it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear suppression in some cases, or I don't know, mismanagement maybe, but it happens a lot. Let's put it that way. It happens a lot.
Well, my philosophy in writing on science for almost a half a century now, my philosophy is always in each article to present both sides of the picture. In other
Mhm.
words, I will tell you what's good about something, then I'll tell you what's bad about something, and then I'll probably conclude it by saying if you're going to use it, here's how much to use, and don't go above that. That's always been my pattern. In other words, I try to give both sides of the story, let a person make up their own mind. I'm not out to get any particular substance.
I've actually been getting better about that this year. I just self-reflectively this year I've noticed my videos and my writing, I'm trying really hard to present both sides as equally as I can without a biased perspective. Like particularly my writing on diet and like biomechanics and exercise, sometimes it really comes across very biased the way I'm writing about it. I feel like I'm not giving the other side, well, used to. I should say used to. I'm getting better. But I'm really kind of conscious of that nowadays. I got a lot of feedback from people saying, "Well, why are you so blank without giving the other side?" I'm like, "Oh, because everybody knows the other side." Like, well, you got to put it in here as well, so it shows you understand it. You comprehend the other side as well. Now, usually, I actually start off by steel manning the other side first, making them look amazing, and then giving my points afterwards. That's usually what I do nowadays. So I try to. I try to, anyways.
Well, it adds the credibility, your own credibility, if you give both sides of the story. Otherwise, people think you're biased and dogmatic.
Exactly.
Uh, Now, a good example of that was, as I know you admire these, Mike Menser, for example, with his high
Mhm.
intensity training. Mike said a lot of things that were true, as you know. I mean, intensity is most important. He also emphasized the fact that most people overtrain. They do. That's also a fact. It is also a fact that you do need a certain amount of recovery to fully recover. But he basically would go overboard by saying, if you don't train this way, you're an idiot. He more or less would say that, and you're all wrong and this and that. Well, you can't say that because as it turned out over the years that science has looked at that type of training and they've kind of like realized there's modifications that need to be made. Like I think I might have mentioned in a past video with you, they now know that you can get the same benefits with, let's say, heavier weights by going training to near failure. You don't have to go to complete failure. You can go to near failure where maybe you have 2 reps left. If you stop there, you'll get all the benefits of going to failure, with the exception being with lightweight. When you go to lightweight, maybe 30 to 40% of 1 rep max. You have to, for that, you have to use higher reps, at least 20 reps, and you do have to go to failure. And that type of training, if you don't go to failure, all you're doing is endurance training. You're not going to gain any
Mhm.
more. That's the
Well,
exception.
actually, I should clarify that as well. Some other new crap has come up that I've been researching and practicing as well. As a matter of fact, I don't want to dig too much into it because I have a whole bunch of other videos on this. But long story short, my training nowadays, I do basically arm day, core day, leg day. Think about it like that. But none of them are compound movements. I mean, I know that's basically impossible. Any movement's essentially a compound movement, but you know what I mean. They're all isolated movements as much as is possible for the arms, for the core, and then for the legs. And then I repeat it again after a day off, arms, legs, and core. And so basically that's my week. Now, the first three arms, legs, and core day, I do those with medium weight, usually, well, it depends on my mood, but either 4 or 5 sets, kind of depending on time and mood, I should say. And that's done with moderate weight, give or take anywhere from 20 to 30 reps, going through a full cycle, starting, let's say, front delt, then rear delt, lateral delt, bicep, tricep, forearm flexor, forearm extensor, and then back to the start, going that way. So that's the way I do it the first 3 days for both arms, core, and legs, just different exercises cycled through. Then I get the day off, recover a bit, and then what I do the next couple of days is I really reduce the weight a lot, actually. I go to lighter weight and I do all, let's say we're back to arm day. I would do all bicep sets back to back. So 5 sets of biceps with only 30-second rest in between, as opposed to 4 or 5 minutes in between. So I'd literally be, for my biceps this week, it was 25 pounds. I was like 40 reps, 30-second break, and then probably 32, 30-second break, 25, 30-second break. You know how it goes. But that's a completely different style of training. That's getting more of like a sarcoplasmic pump. And it really, I swear to God, it really does build the tissues. I'll send you articles on it if you want, but there's a lot of stuff about this. I didn't believe until the last couple 6 months I started applying it myself. It seemed kind of stupid, things about pre-stretching the muscle, stretching the muscle intersets, doing this kind of sarcoplasmic pump training as opposed to just the heavier loading. All of these things come into play when you're dealing with the biomechanics, something I hadn't really considered before. A lot of these studies only took into account compound movements as opposed to isolated movements, and a bunch of other different variables as well. But when you start applying it intelligently with the correct frequency and everything else, it's actually very impressive, the results, both in myself and my clients who've been practicing it as well. It's quite dramatic, actually.
I can see that. Yeah.
But again, these are not till failure. These every time it's near failure. So it doesn't matter if it's the lighter weight or the moderate weight. It's always near failure. I never go to the failure because it would take me too long to recover till the next workout. You know what I'm talking
Well, that's
about.
true. That's the drawback about going to failure. You require more recovery time.
Mhm.
It's true. There's no doubt about it. You know.
It does work good with compound movements. I mean, I'll give them that. As for a compound movement, squats and bench presses and certain other movements, it would be efficient, I think. Not overhead press. I don't like certain things like that, but other things, not deadlift. But it would be effective for some things, I think.
Yeah.
But let's get into the topic of today. I got two. I think we'll probably be able to get to both of them, but we'll see. They're both kind of fun, and it's only because for whatever reason they've been coming up a lot recently with me and my clients and emails and stuff. So number one is fluoride. This is, I mean, to me, it's kind of funny because I don't really know what the pseudoscience is here. It's pretty much non-debatable that fluoride is good. I mean, we'll get into it. And then the other one is blood pressure. While your actual blood pressure number doesn't matter so much as your actual activity level, lifestyle, and some other factors, and also how it could be influenced during the testing, I suppose. But which one do you want to hit first?
Let's talk about hypertension first, or high blood pressure.
Oh yeah, sure. So let's explain. That's actually usually the question I get is about hypertension. So what is hypertension? Let's explain that first.
Hypertension is well, it's basically a technical term for high blood pressure. And there's different kinds of hypertension. One of them, there's no direct cause, and that's been labeled essential hypertension. In other words, they don't really know the cause of it. There's a couple of theories that make sense with the discovery of nitric oxide in the late 90s and knowing what nitric oxide does, meaning that it dilates blood vessels. It plays a huge role in controlling blood pressure. One prevailing theory as to the cause of essential hypertension is a defect in the production of nitric oxide in the endothelium or lining of arteries. Now the strange thing is the major cause of that defect is hypertension. In other words,
Jesus.
I mean, it's like a revolving door.
Yeah.
Having high blood pressure consistently for a long time damages the lining of the arteries, and that's where this enzyme called endothelial nitric oxide synthetase resides. That enzyme converts the amino acid arginine into nitric oxide. So if the endothelium is damaged, you're not going to be able to produce enough nitric oxide. Your blood vessels are going to be tight, and you're going to get high blood pressure. A secondary possibility is atherosclerosis, or the accumulation of plaque in the lining of the blood vessels, which is of course, a major risk factor for heart attacks and strokes. That also causes damage to the endothelium, and either one of those or both would explain essential hypertension. Now, the second type of hypertension you could say is a kind of a genetically based hypertension. It's more prevalent in Black people for some reason, and has to do with a abnormality in what they call the renin-aldosterone angiotensin II axis. In other words, renin is a protein produced, if I remember correctly, by the kidneys, and then you have something called angiotensin 1, which is converted to angiotensin 2. Angio means blood vessel, tensin means tension. So angiotensin 2 actually tightens up the blood vessels. Now, aldosterone is a adrenal steroid hormone whose main function is to retain sodium. Now, with increased sodium, you get increased blood volume, increased tension in the blood vessels, and that coupled with the renin-angiotensin thing, now you have that hypertension. But an important point to note about this type of hypertension is that these people are sensitive to sodium. In other words, they make medical authorities tend to make a blanket statement that Everybody should consume a low sodium diet to prevent high blood pressure.
Mhm.
In other words, I'm not saying you should have as much sodium as you need, but the actual effect, if you're talking about hypertension, the people that have this let's say abnormality of the renin-angiotensin aldosterone axis, they are sensitive to sodium. For them, it actually does make sense to to limit your sodium intake. For all others, you can have much more sodium than the government recommends. I believe the government currently recommends 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day.
Mhm.
The truth of the matter is, I wrote a big article about this in Applied Metabolics about the truth about sodium. Uh, you know, the truth of the matter is that if you don't have this genetic abnormality, you'd actually, especially if you're working out, you'll
You
actually
need a lot.
you'll actually be better off ingesting as much as 6 grams, 6,000 milligrams. It is not going to give you hypertension, but it will ward off sodium, let's say, deficient symptoms like fatigue, cramps, muscle problems, that kind of thing. So, it depends on the individual, but those are the two basic kind. And the big problem with hypertension, no matter what the cause, is it's probably the number one risk factor for a stroke, having a stroke.
Mhm.
It's there's two kinds of stroke. You have an ischemic stroke, which is caused by a blockage of blood vessels by let's say, a clot in the brain, and the other one is called what's the other one called? I can't remember the other kind, but the other one is caused by an actual bursting of the blood vessels in the brain, cerebral hemorrhage,
Mhm.
and that is related to high blood pressure. That's the high blood pressure stroke, and the cerebral hemorrhage, that's the one that really screws people up, either kills them or causes paralysis for life. It's really bad because it causes
Permanent brain damage.
a lot of brain damage. It causes. So that's the big problem.
I should mention two things real quick. So, thing number one, the reason this actually gets brought to me lots of times, I mean, I'll literally have this referred to me, is just because just correctly breathing through your nose, diaphragmically, fully inflating your lungs, again, nasally though, this is important. You actually filter the oxygen and get more nitrous oxide mixed into your blood more efficiently, which makes the whole process better, which lowers your blood pressure. So things like sleeping, we should probably talk about how sleeping relates to blood pressure as well. Things like sleeping, even going, an example I always use is daylight savings time in America. Sometimes you lose an hour of sleep, sometimes you gain an hour of sleep. Well, the days that we lose an hour of sleep, there's something like a 42% increase in cardiac arrests and strokes and things like this related to high blood pressure. And the days that everybody gets an extra hour of sleep, I don't want to like butcher the numbers, but there's a big decrease in drowsy driving incidents. There's a big decrease in morality. There's a big decrease in strokes and heart attacks. You guys get the idea. So it's the direct relation to sleep. This is kind of how it affects your blood pressure. I don't want to say anecdotally, but just, in summary, do you want to dig into that a little bit, Jerry?
Well, breathing through your nose makes sense because your nose has its own nitric oxide system.
Mhm.
The nitric oxide is actually produced in the nose. So breathing through your nose, as you point out, will, because the nitric oxide increase will dilate blood vessels and tend to lower blood pressure.
Especially if
Now,
you do it slowly, by the way. It's
right,
important to do it inhale slowly. And I'm sorry, Jared, to interrupt, but it's important to inhale slowly. It's important to exhale slowly. And while you're exhaling, if you actually do it with a slight hum, you get a boost of about 10% to that. Sorry, I just want to throw that in there.
interestingly enough, breathing through the mouth actually depresses nitric oxide. Not
Mhm.
sure why, but that's what they've shown. So you do want to try and breathe through your nose most of the time. Now, as far as the sleep factor, that probably has to do with an increased release of stress hormones.
Mhm.
You don't get enough sleep. Your body interprets that as stress, and it overproduces like catecholamines, for example, norepinephrine, epinephrine, which are called pressor substances. They constrict blood vessels. And the reason they do that, it's actually a protective device of the body. If, for example, you're in a situation where you're losing blood, your body wants to constrict the blood vessels to prevent maximal blood loss, which will, kill you. So, but when you don't get enough sleep, you get too much. Cortisol's another one. Cortisol will retain sodium, increase blood volume, and that's the mechanism for the sleep effect. Now, conversely, if you get enough sleep, your body will break down enough of these pressor hormones, let's call them. Pressor means increasing blood pressure. So, you'll have a better effect. That's the mechanism there.
So in essence, oh, I apologize. The second thing I was going to say is lots of times doctors will tell their patients to just essentially stop eating sodium. Don't eat sodium at all.
Oh
And
yeah.
this in itself will lead to high blood pressure.
That's strangely enough, that's true. I mean, it's ironic, but I mean, this idea of complete, and I've seen a lot of these. I don't want to limit it to vegan advocates, but a lot of these extremist MDs, they will tell people not to have any sodium at all.
Mhm.
Sodium, of course, is found in a lot of foods naturally. You don't have to necessarily add sodium chloride or salt to food. It's in food. A lot of it's in food. But the thing is, they will tell people to actually restrict foods that contain sodium. So now they're deficient in sodium.
Oh, and on that note, we've talked about this before, but guess what is on the rise again because of American doctors?
What's that?
Goiters.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
For
I'm
the
gonna,
same reason. I mean, do you want to explain that one real quick?
yeah. Hold on a second. I just want to
Yeah,
look at.
no worries. So real quick, guys, a goiter is something that happens when you have a thyroid deficiency,
Right.
imbalance of some kind. Basically, you're
Yeah.
not getting enough. Now, Jerry will expound on this, but this is related to not having iodine in your diet, essentially, unless there's some form of a genetic abnormality. But sorry,
Right.
go ahead, Jerry.
Well, what happened was, let me get the camera here. What happened was that uh, goiter was very common years ago, and let's say in the 30s. They had something in the U.S. called the goiter belt, which is like in the South and Midwest, where these people had these goiter, like this big growth in the neck and everything. What's happening there is the thyroid gland is not getting enough iodine, and it expands or hypertrophies to try and trap as much iodine as possible, because your thyroid hormone, and there's two basic ones, T3 and T4. The numbers indicate the number of iodine atoms in the thyroid hormone itself. Thyroid iodine, I believe, if I remember correctly, 2/3 of thyroid hormone is iodine. The other third is the amino acid tyrosine. So, but what happened was they started producing iodized salt. They started adding salt I'm sorry, iodine to salt. When that did that, that was the end of goiters. I mean, it would be the only time you see goiters after that was in third world countries,
Mhm.
where again they're not getting their iodine from food. Of course, easily the best source of iodine are seafood, various types of seafood. Kelp is another one. But the thing is that now, and this relates to the sodium, because of this a big thing about how bad sodium is, people have stopped eating iodized salt,
Mhm.
which ironically, was their main source of dietary iodine. I mean, these people don't take
Uh,
vitamins and minerals, so they're not getting iodine. So goiter is making a comeback. Believe it or not, iodine deficiency, which hasn't been seen in over 70 years, is now making a comeback.
I'm not going to get into, who it is or anything, but I've had two people in the last 2 months who had freaking goiters and they didn't know what it was and they were referred to me, and I said, did you go to the clinic about this? Did you literally talk to anyone? They would have immediately identified this. Well, no, I didn't think it was a big deal. I'm like, you didn't think that was a big deal? I'm like, so let me guess, your doctor said salt is bad, right? And they
Right.
said, yeah, how did you know? I said, because of that thing on your neck. You
Yeah.
know, it
Well,
was just horrible. It's just horrible. I don't understand people sometimes. It drives me crazy.
well,
Um,
go ahead.
no, it's all you do. I was just gonna say, what else should we mention about this? I think we got most of it covered, I think.
About hypertension, you mean?
Hypertension, high blood pressure, correlating between the salt, the sleep.
Well, yeah, but related to hypertension, there's certain nutrients you could take where, the problem with that a lot of people have when you have hypertension. Now, let's define hypertension. Besides what I said earlier,
Well, the average blood pressure should be what they say it should be.
120 over 80 and
Yeah,
lower.
yeah.
Anything if it's 130, which is systolic, that's the contraction of the heart. When it gets to be 130, that's moderate hypertension. 140 is full blown hypertension.
Mhm.
Now, you get to a lot of doctors, will treat you with antihypertensive drugs when you have a 130 hypertension, blood pressure. Usually they wait till you get to 140. The problem with antihypertensive drugs,
Yeah, I knew what you meant. Yeah.
they have a shitload of side effects, including impotence, mental changes, and all that. So some the problem is some people refuse to exercise and diet, so they more or less, just like people have to be on statins to control their blood lipids because they won't diet and exercise. It's if they don't, I mean, if they're not on statins, they'll die. And the same with these people on hypertensive, if they're not going to do anything on their own, to control, like in the way of exercise and diet, they control the high blood pressure. If they don't take the drugs, they will die. They'll get a stroke. But here's the point. Here's the caveat. There's ways of controlling hypertension without having to take drugs. Now, the first thing right away is you want to lower your body weight, especially body fat. As your body fat drops, your body fat levels drop, your level of blood lipids, which are related to cardiovascular disease, like low density lipoprotein and all that stuff, that's going to, and HDL, which is protective, high density lipoprotein, will go up, LDL will go down just by losing body fat. You don't have to do anything else. Of course, you have to diet and exercise for that. The other thing that you want to do, as related to hypertension, is probably, if you're not sure which category you fall in, it's a good idea not to go crazy on sodium. In other words, most people, as I said, can get maybe 6 grams, 6,000 milligrams. Remember, the government only recommends 1,500. Most people can get away with 6,000 with no effect on hypertension. There'll be no problem. Now, there's little tricks you can do, and this applies to bodybuilders. I've told this to bodybuilders. A lot of bodybuilders worry about sodium because sodium retains water in the body. And they're looking for that really ripped up, shredded muscle look. And you have water under the skin, it obscures muscle definition, and they know that sodium retains water. So they take stuff like diuretics to get rid of, which is, that's an overkill way of doing it, but that's another story. But the trick is that if you, for some reason, consume an excess amount of sodium, all you have to do, let's say you take in 3,000 milligrams of sodium, which is a pretty good amount for one shot. A lot of people don't know this. If you take 1,500 milligrams of potassium, with the preferred form being potassium citrate powder, if you take it along right after or at the same time as you consume that sodium, the sodium goes right through you. It's not retained in the body. The potassium causes the sodium to be excreted. So does calcium, but potassium is more potent in that regard. Omega-3 fatty acids have a way of relaxing blood vessels. So if you're not getting omega-3 from fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, halibut, you might want to consider a fish oil supplement. Vitamin, go ahead.
Sorry, does the fish oil, does it relax them or does it make them more elastic?
Both. It actually,
okay, go on.
it makes it more elastic, and it actually kind of like modifies the pressure effect. It'll modify that, and by doing, it's not a major effect. I'm not saying it's, if you take fish oil, your
No,
blood.
but there's an effect there though, yeah.
Yeah, and when you consider that, I mean, I personally, the figures vary, the official figure. I think that about at least 70 to 80% of people are deficient in omega-3 because they're not eating fish and they're not taking fish oil. And, they have alpha linoleic acid, which is a precursor for the bioavailable omega-3, which is DHA and EPA. But DHA and EPA are the bioactive ones. Alpha linoleic acid, only 2% of it can be converted into the active forms. Now, ALA is found in a lot of foods, but it's not going to prevent you from having omega-3 problems if you don't eat fatty fish or take fish oil. So that, and vitamin D is also involved because vitamin D is involved in calcium metabolism and magnesium metabolism. And these minerals are all involved in blood pressure regulation. Of course, magnesium alone is extremely important for blood. It helps to relax the blood vessels. And people don't know it, but magnesium is needed to activate vitamin D into its hormonal or bioactive form. So if you're deficient in magnesium, which 75% of Americans are, you can take all the vitamin D you want. it's not going to be activated. So, it gets a little complex. There's other things that are a little bit far out, like cocoa polyphenols, for example. Cocoa polyphenols, they have supplements for that now. But,
I don't know what that is. What is that?
they're basically kind of antioxidants found naturally. An example of one is called epicatechin. Epicatechin is one of the primary cocoa polyphenols.
Sounds
What
like
it
a cereal. Like I want to eat that.
Well, no, what it does is it actually tremendously boosts nitric oxide. You know,
Oh,
yeah, in
nice.
2 hours, if after eating a cocoa polyphenol or taking a supplement,
It's a
or
precursor?
huh?
It's a precursor?
Yeah, no, well, it stimulates nitric oxide through two different routes. One of them is the fact that it's a powerful antioxidant, and the major route of breakdown of nitric oxide is oxidation. It's oxidized very rapidly. So if you give something like a cocoa polyphenol, it kind of extends the life of nitric oxide, and doing so, it helps to relax the blood vessels. So, and of
I'm gonna
course,
have to find that and get myself a nice big bowl of cocoa polyphenols tomorrow to eat.
well, if you can eat cocoa, you better get real cocoa. Don't get,
No, I'm totally joking, Joe. It's about
no, no,
cereal.
I'm talking like seriously. If you want to get some of the benefits of these cocoa polyphenols, you would eat something like
Mm.
dark chocolate, not the milk chocolate or the other crap. That's garbage. That's candy. You have to eat dark chocolate. They have the highest amount of cocoa polyphenols. You'll know it's the right chocolate because they have a kind of a bitter taste.
A
If
good
it,
way to get that, by the way, guys, is to mix it in with your coffee. If you haven't tried this yet, actually try it. It's fairly good from what I understand. I don't like coffee myself, but I do recommend my clients try this. They usually do like it.
yeah,
Another thing I should probably mention, just because I say this all the time, is guys, make sure you refrigerate your fish oil. This is very important. I don't know why you guys aren't. You have to refrigerate your fish oil. It's one of those supplements that goes in the refrigerator as soon as you open it, just so we all know. You can also use things like krill oil. Same thing. You gotta refrigerate the krill oil. What else you got, Jerry?
as far as what hypertension,
I don't know. You're over there jiggling away on the computer. I
uh,
figured you had something.
the other thing I was just going to mention, to round out the supplements, citrulline is converted into arginine in the kidneys. So if you really want to raise nitric oxide, you're interested in doing this, whether it's to get a better pump when you're working out or low or controlling blood pressure, you want to use citrulline doses 8 to 10 grams about an hour before working out. It'll be converted in the kidneys to arginine. Arginine gets into the blood. It hits the endothelial nitric oxide synthetase enzyme. Boom, it's converted into nitric oxide. Arginine, unfortunately, itself, when you take it orally, most of it's broken down by an arginase enzyme. There's things you could take to avoid that too. Norvaline is one of them. There's a substance called norvaline, which is a kind of let's say what would they call it? It's like a byproduct of the branched chain amino acid valine. It's called norvaline, and there's another one called agadamine sulfate. Agadamine sulfate. They include some of these things. If you look at the pre-workout supplements, you'll see these things on pre-workout, either agadamine, norvaline, or both, because they know that adding arginine alone, most of it's not is going to be broken down, not turned into nitric oxide. And one of the reasons why people take pre-workout is they want to get a better pump.
Mhm.
So to do that, you got to increase your nitric oxide. So by including norvaline or agadamine, the norvaline and agadamine actually blunt arginase. So now you get much greater uptake of arginine, and you will get a nitric oxide effect. So but from the point of view of blood pressure, that great control of blood vessel. In fact, maintaining well, let me put it this way. One of the guys that won the Nobel Prize for the isolation of nitric oxide back in 98, he was a professor at UCLA. He actually wrote an entire book for the lay public, for the public, not a medical book. He wrote it for the public, where he offered his theory that ingesting arginine, because of relation to nitric oxide, and this is a pretty hyperbolic statement, will actually prevent almost every form of cardiovascular disease. Now, I don't know if I'd go so far to say that, but the point is, it will definitely make a huge dent in helping to control hypertension or blood pressure.
They tended to do that more back in the days. Like nowadays, nobody really does that in their papers. Nobody who's kind of says, yes, and it will cure everything. They don't do that anymore. They were a little bit more dramatic back in the day, I think.
Well, when a book is written by a guy who won the Nobel Prize,
People take it seriously.
it's not the same as some schmuck on what is it called, YouTube, or what's the other one called? I
I'm
forget
on
now.
YouTube.
Huh?
I'm
No,
just
no, I'm,
kidding.
I'm not
I'm
saying
just
I'm
kidding.
not you, but no, what's that? I forgot the name of that big app that people love. What the hell's the name?
Kindle?
Huh? No,
Kindle?
no, not Kindle. It's I'll tell you in a second. I just gotta look on my phone. Hold on a
Candy
second.
Crush?
No, 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 no. This is a lot of guys on here. What the hell's it called again?
Grinder.
No. Ah, damn it, I can't find it. Oh, Instagram. A lot of these.
Instagram, Jesus, Jared.
I mean, I know a lot of people, are self-appointed experts giving out advice, and they don't know shit from Shinola. And
Yeah.
it's not just average guys. I see a lot of YouTube videos. I think I mentioned this before, by MDs and people with advanced degrees, and the only way I could describe it is they're just basically full of shit. There's,
Yeah.
there's this one guy from New Zealand. I don't know why, but this guy reminds me of a puppet I used to watch on TV when I was a kid called Howdy Doody. When I
I
was a
know
young,
how to do it. Yeah.
I don't know. When I look at him, I think of Howdy Doody. He's a young guy I don't know why he reminds me of a
I gotta
human.
check it out now.
I can't remember his name, Brad something or other. He's from New Zealand, and he says so many things that are wrong, and people, because he has the MD, I see the comments. Thank you, Brad, for telling us the truth. You're the one beacon of light. The guy is full of shit most of the time. One example, just I caught this the other day. It really pissed me off. He produced a video about supplements that are worthless, and one of the supplements he mentioned was something called spermidine, which is produced in the body. It has to do with longevity. I can't go into it. It would take too long to explain. But
I've
in,
never heard of it actually.
yeah, we could talk about some other time. But
Yeah.
basically, uh, let me put it this way: people that live to over 90 or 100 have higher spermidine levels. They think it's related to longevity. It stimulates something called autophagy in the body. You know about autophagy
Mhm.
with fasting. Very potent stimulator autophagy. But anyway, he makes this flat statement: yes, you can't absorb spermidine supplements. You can't absorb it. Don't waste your. There's about 40 studies showing that you absorb spermidine from food and supplements. This guy
Mhm.
comes by 3 studies, and he makes a flat statement, and people think because he's an MD, he must know. He's full of shit. I
I mean,
call
maybe this is why so many people are doing the no FAP nowadays. They're getting it confused. They're retaining their sperm, but not their spermacine.
Yeah.
Sorry, but just moving forward, the last kind of point we touched on it briefly, but I would like to wrap it up a little bit, I guess, with this. So, with the high blood pressure, there's a couple of things to take into account. One is obviously your genetics, as always. This is an important thing to consider. Some people really do just get screwed in the genetic lottery. Another thing to consider is your actual activity level. So, for example, I'm a very, very, very active person. Lots of times I don't necessarily sleep as much as I should. Now, if I check my blood pressure on a day where I haven't slept very much, I'm on caffeine and I'm running around like a lunatic, my blood pressure is going to be 3 times above normal. Does that mean I'm going to stroke out? No. It
No, no.
just, but this is the point I'm making. But if I was getting measured by a doctor, on top of the fact that I hate doctors in general and hospitals freak me out, uh, it would be even higher at that point, and they would be really concerned. And I've literally had them try to put me on meds for it before, and I have to explain, like, I'm not to be rude here, people, but this is what's up, and this is why my blood pressure is so high. Another point I should probably make, by the way, is I was just asked this multiple times, my thoughts on pre-workout. I haven't taken pre-workout in the better part of 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years. I'm not sure. It's been a long time. The reason for this is I don't like it. I barely take caffeine anymore, just usually 200 milligrams first thing in the morning. My pre-workout, if I'm going to have one, if it's a sarcoplasmic pump day, is I take 6 ounces of beet juice, just for anybody who's curious about that. I don't know if you want to explain that one, but it's pretty simple. It's the same thing with nitric oxide, but kind of I guess you'd say a natural option, even though everything's natural. You guys know what I mean.
Well, beetroot juice is, there's 2 routes to increasing nitric oxide. One is to the amino acid route, which is arginine and citrulline. In other words, arginine as is the direct precursor for nitric oxide. In other words, arginine is converted into nitric oxide. However, as I said earlier, the problem with nitric arginine is a lot of it's broken down. When you take it orally, it's broken down in the gut. Citrulline is found naturally. Watermelon is a very good natural source of citrulline. Citrulline bypasses the arginine gut enzyme barrier, goes to the kidneys convert it back into arginine, then it enters the blood. Now you're getting all this free arginine in the blood, which is converted to nitric oxide. The other route would be certain vegetables, leafy green vegetables. What's another one? Spinach, raw spinach, parsley, and beets. Beets are among the highest of they contain something called nitrates. Nitrates. Now it's interesting because you have to understand nitric oxide is a gas. It's produced like in the bloodstream and other parts of the body, but it's produced, it's like a ghost. It's produced and gone in less than 6 seconds. That's why they
The
never
guy got the prize, by the way. That's why the guy got the prize for it.
exactly. This is why they never were able to isolate it because they couldn't get it. It's gone. So they knew there was something dilating the blood vessels and they labeled it endothelial relaxation factor. But those three scientists, they figured out that it was nitric oxide. How did they figure it out? Because the byproducts of nitric oxide are nitrate and nitrites. That's how you know that your body's producing more. They were able to deduce that it's from increased nitric oxide. That's how it was discovered. Nitrates are found naturally, like I said, in vegetables. Beets are among the highest. Nitrates, when you, for example, drink beet juice, let's say, right? What happens is the first step in the mouth, you have certain bacteria in the saliva that contain enzymes that start to convert the nitrate into nitrite. These are two different things. It has to do with, I don't want to get into the chemistry. It'll bore the shit out of people.
I have other videos on this, actually. It's fine.
Yeah. Anyway, the first step is the salivary enzymes, bacteria, I should say, converting nitrate into nitrite. If you take in, let's say, antiseptic mouthwash, you kill off that bacteria, and you basically short circuit the system at the start. If you don't have the mouthwash, what happens is now you have a partial conversion into nitrite. It gets into the gut. Other enzymes convert it into nitric oxide, and this process takes about anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours. See, so you have to consider, because all these enzymes involved, it's not an immediate thing. If you want a faster production of nitric oxide, you could take citrulline, which in only 1 hour will be converted into nitric. However, if you go the vegetable route or the beetroot juice, you're gonna have to give yourself at least 2 hours.
It actually takes me about 90 minutes. I'll start. You don't feel it, but you notice. It's a bit hard to explain it, but you feel it. I mean, I don't have any way to explain it to you guys. I apologize, but I usually know at the 90-minute mark is time to go do my warm up and start my workout. And there's by the way, a very noticeable difference in the pumps that you get.
Right.
It's quite painful, as a matter of fact. If you're not accustomed to it, it's very painful.
Well, there is some emerging studies showing that people that are, let's say, habitual exercises or athletes who are involved in a lot of physical activity, they can convert the nitrite into nitric oxide in as little as an hour.
More efficiently.
Yeah, they have more efficient metabolism. In fact, some elite athletes have such an efficient production of nitric oxide that when you give them beetroot juice, it has no effect because their body's already maximizing nitric oxide. In other words, beetroot juice.
Oh, wow.
Beetroot juice works better for people that aren't at the upper level of, let's say, athleticism, which is most people. So that's an interesting fact. Anabolic steroids increase nitric oxide. It's another. There's
certain ones in particular too are more known for it. I mean, you get painful pumps on Anavar, for example. You get not you don't know, but I mean, you'll get really painful pumps on Anavar. You'll get really painful pumps on D-bol. Depending on your diet, of course. But
one of the reasons why testosterone, if you have a man who's, let's say, deficient in testosterone, one of the symptoms is erectile dysfunction. Now if you give them supplemental testosterone, in most cases, not all, but most cases, he'll get his potency back. Now, what's happening there is testosterone is stimulating local nitric oxide in the cavernous cavernosa, the spongy tissue of the penis, allowing the penis to fill up with blood again and give them an erection. So, in other words, you can say that testosterone, and of course, Viagra works the same way. All these Viagra drugs and the other one, I can't remember the name of it.
There's so many. There's a lot.
Yeah, they're always coming out with new ones. It's a huge market, which
Oh,
which by the way says something. Think about that for a second. Did you ever stop to think how, you look online, everyone's selling Viagra tab. I mean, there's a huge demand for it. Doesn't that tell you something about how many men in the world are suffering from erectile dysfunction? It says something. And the real danger about that is erectile dysfunction. It could be caused by diabetes, nerve damage, but another possible cause is atherosclerosis and the arteries down there. That's a harbinger of cardiovascular disease, and that's really dangerous.
we got to end on this. I don't know if you've heard about this yet. I mean, if you haven't, we'll just leave it alone because I actually do not know enough about it to comment yet.
What's that?
They're basically going to make it almost impossible to be getting TRT.
I don't understand. What do you mean? Who's doing that?
There was this morning, I was sent this by several of my clients. Apparently, they're going to be passing laws making it extremely difficult to have access to TRT, essentially. I mean, I haven't even read them yet, but I'm going to get to it later.
Somebody sent me some information about that too. From what
Speculation, I have no opinion, everyone. Speculation.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let me clarify that for you. What they're trying to crack down on is telemarketing. In other words, getting testosterone from like these online clinics where you're not under any kind of medical supervision, where you just order testosterone.
Okay.
That's what they're trying to abolish. Now, testosterone, you have to understand, it's a fully approved drug by the FDA. It's fully legal to be prescribed by a physician, and that's not going to change because being deficient in testosterone is a recognized medical entity. I mean, to get rid of testosterone would be like saying, well, we're going to get rid of, we're going to ban cancer therapy drugs.
Thank you.
People with cancer and let them die.
Worse. Yeah, it's even worse than that because this is more than 50% of the population.
Yeah, so
who deal with testosterone, especially. I mean, I'm not going to get into it right now, but especially with all of the plastics in food, the way that the male hormones are actually declining. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to rant about this, but basically, men are more unhealthy than they have ever been. Testosterone levels are lower than they have ever been in recorded history. Everyone is suffering because of it. Even the knowledge of the massive benefits of having a healthy hormone testosterone level in men, they don't even understand that. People don't even want to go for TRT because they think it's some horrible thing. It's being very negatively associated. Males in general with high levels of testosterone are being ostracized and negatively associated in today's culture. It's actually bad to be a man in today's culture. It's all going downhill. As we all know, I am not on board this goddamn boat. You're obviously not either, Jerry. But I mean,
well, what's interesting? If you look at the official statistics for the number of men that are deficient in testosterone, and I'm not talking about really older men past the age of 70. I'm talking about men, let's say between 30 and 40. If you up to 50, if you look at the official statistics, they say that only 50% of men are clinically deficient in testosterone, as defined by having a blood total testosterone level lower than 300 nanograms per deciliter. Now, here's the interesting thing, though.
I already know where you're going with this.
Let me tell you, this is what I wanted to point out. I have spoken, and I'm not exaggerating, to probably hundreds of men over the last 30 years about testosterone, and I have never yet met one man, not one, who was over 40 who didn't have a lower testosterone level. Yet to meet one. According to them, I should have only met maybe 10 men like that. Instead, I'm talking maybe 300 men. So
I'm right there with you. I know exactly one, and he's a freak of nature. He's a freak of nature.
So what was that saying by Mark Twain? Lies, statistics. I can't remember how it goes. There are big lies, little, and then there's statistics. In other words, statistics are often bullshit. You know what I mean? Like,
how you manipulate them.
Yeah, like the thing I was saying earlier about magnesium, about omega-3. According to them, vitamin D only 40%. Oh, bullshit. If you're not getting this stuff from food, where the fuck are you going to get it from? Come on. What is it going to
Wow.
come in the air?
It's statistics 101, people. I always use the example of Russian roulette. It's a wonderful example to use in the case of statistics. Well, we interviewed everyone who played Russian roulette and nobody died. So Russian roulette is 100% safe to play. It's that's
Yeah,
statistics, people. That's how it works. You can manipulate it to say any goddamn thing you want.
basically true.
That
Yeah,
was a funny one, though. I haven't used that in a while.
yeah.
Sorry. But anyways, so I guess let's just call this a part one and try to have a part two on fluoride and another topic next week. I'll pick at random, I suppose. There's so many myths to freaking bust.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do flat earther. That'd be fun. We haven't done that yet.
Flat
That's
Earth.
not that's I
Flat
mean
Earth.
that's just not really in this realm, but it would be really easy to do it without even using science. I mean,
Really, well, if you really want to go into some interesting topic, let's talk about why Donald Trump was the greatest president, better than Abraham Lincoln.
that would
I,
actually be fun to do. Seriously, that'd be fun to do. That would be
I,
fun to do.
you
I
know,
don't want to. I don't want to upturn that
but
rock right now. But
if you want to have some fun personally for yourself,
we
you know,
should.
no matter where you stay, I'm not asking you for your personal
I
politics.
don't even have a political opinion. I just keep up to
Wait,
date
wait,
because it's funny.
this applies to anyone watching this. If you want to have some fun just for yourself, next time you encounter somebody that's an obvious Trump supporter, go up to them and don't try and get in a fight with them. Just say, "Excuse me, you support Trump, right?" And the person will say, "Yeah." Say, "Could you tell me what President Trump has done for you personally to help your life? Please tell me." And they'll say stuff like, "Well, he built a wall," and then you point out he only built 30 miles of wall, and everything they say will not be true. But a lot of them, this is where the funny part comes in. They'll go, they say they're not usually hit with that question. In other words, Trump support is what they call mob think. A lot of people follow it without understanding why they're actually following. They see other
Mhm.
people doing it. These are people that are not independent thinkers.
They're
They
sheeple.
Yeah, sheeple. They see a bunch of people storming the Capitol, so they're going to join in. They never stop and think, why are we doing this? But
Mhm.
that's so a lot of these people you encounter, when you say, what has Trump done for you? They'll suddenly be, it's almost like this a slap in the, they go, he's done, they can't come up with anything.
Well, this is the same parallel you could make to, I mean, many things. I mean, we could make this parallel to exercise. Go up to the average person in the gym. Why are you doing this exercise? I don't know. Because, is this how you're supposed to do it? I don't know. How many reps are you going to do? I don't know. Well, what's your weight selection? I don't know. What's your diet like? I don't know. Wow, Jesus, you're not going to go anywhere. Okay. Yeah, have a good life.
I don't
It's
know.
the same
Look,
kind of a thing.
I don't know how it is where you are, but I can tell you as a fact, I trained at a famous gym, Gold's Gym in Venice.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, this might surprise you. I train at night. Whereas less people there, but I've been there during the day also. And
No idea what they're doing.
I'm telling you that 99, not 99, 99.9% of people in that gym are
Mhm.
clueless about their training. They have no idea. I'm not talking about the cell phone stuff.
Oh,
I'm
I
talking about
know.
the actual exercise. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're completely clueless.
I
Complete.
know. We let's do this next time. We're just gonna call this part one. We'll do part two soon, and we'll tag it into this one. And so let's do next one. We're gonna come back with fluoride and then taking steroids and not looking like you are. So without no, seriously, because that's a fun one because the number of people in gyms who are taking steroids and you would never in your life think that they're taking a bunch of different steroids because they look like little tiny people or big fatties are
Uh,
taking massive amounts of drugs. They'll never tell you, and they are, and they're not making progress. And it's for the reasons that we're kind of alluding to here, I suppose. I mean, does that sound fun, Jerry?
It sounds fun, and it's true. I mean, the most of the people I've seen over the years that take steroids don't look like they're taking steroids. Let me put it
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and I mean, but there's multiple. It's a layered thing though. There's multiple reasons for this. Could be fake drugs. Could be
Yeah,
poor genetics. Could be
true.
poor diet. Could be not sleeping. Steroids can't make up for that shit. You know what I mean?
They're not.
Could be your bone structure. If you're taller, you're not really going to look like it as much. Could be, I mean, could be your literally just your training might suck. You might have no intensity. You might not have a training plan with proper frequency. Steroids will not make up for these things.
They will
But
not.
we'll dig into that next time. Let's call it a night. I gotta wrap it up. So let's do part two next week if we can. Fluoride and taking steroids, not looking like you are.
Hello and welcome to Castle's Corner. I'm Coach Castle, and I'm here to educate you in the latest science regarding biomechanics, biochemistry, respiratory health, nutrition, and much more. Please remember to subscribe to this channel and like these videos if you find this content helpful. But now, let's go ahead and get into the video. Every little bit counts. Don't forget, get your finger exercise in and help me out at the same time. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.